So another Jurassic June in the bag, and I hope you guys have had a fun one this year in 2019. I know I've had an interesting one. I released Chapter 1 of Dino Defenders on June 1st, and I've also created a few other little videos for the channel, live streams and commentaries over the Jurassic World night parade at Universal Studios Japan. And I figured I would cap off the month with a commentary for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And I have done commentaries for the other four movies, which you can find on this channel. And I noticed with these commentaries, they're hit and miss. People either like them or they don't. And I think the people who don't like these commentaries, they click on the video expecting it's going to be the film or something with me talking over it. Or at least that's what I assume they're going to expect. And then they just find it's just a picture of the poster and it's me rambling on for 2 hours with nothing else. But the idea is that you sync your DVDs and your Blu-rays up, and then I say 3, 2, 1 play or whatever, and then when I say play, you click play, and then you can watch it along with me. Or if you actually just know the films really well, you can just listen to me ramble for 2 hours, I guess, if you know the film off by heart. But anyway, let's get this underway. I've got the Blu-ray in, and it is currently paused at 000000. So when I say the countdown and play, then you can be synced up with me. So let's get this underway. So 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, the Universal logo has just faded up. And we begin. Now, one thing I want to say straight away is the black bars in this movie, and I don't really wish to start with a negative, but it's kind of a weird negative for me, because the film actually looks stunning, like it looks gorgeous to look at, and I do like the black bars, but because every other Jurassic movie doesn't use them, I feel like that it's jarring. It's kind of jarring to get this like letterbox kind of look to the film. And funny enough, it's actually the opposite to the Alien franchise. Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, and Covenant, they all use the sort of letterbox bars on them. But Aliens by James Cameron is the only one that doesn't. So it's the opposite to the Jurassic Park franchise. I just thought that was kind of funny. But here we go. So we start ominously in the water, and you can hear the sonar pinging, and we're introduced to this submarine lurking in the depths. Now this is such a cool idea, this little submarine going into retrieve the Indominus Rex rib and collect its DNA, but basically that's what they're after. But this design of this little submarine and this huge gate to open up into the lagoon, I just love the design of all this. I think it's really, really cool and very Jurassic. And you can see we open up on Isla Nublar, 120 miles west of Costa Rica, and you can see that there's like little trucks and stuff, and it like on the side next to that gate, and it gives it a real sense of scale. Like that's a huge gate. And what amazes me as well about this opening is like most of it, it's like 90% CGI. Like it's incredible, and I think this film really does. And I said this with Jurassic World when that was released. You could see especially with the Jurassic franchise, you could really see a progress of effects. And in this film, the fact that the entire opening sequence, aside from like the set of Main Street and like the inside of the submarine, and obviously the helicopter and stuff, that's all done practically. But the island itself, all this underwater, the Indominus Rex bone, the gates, everything, the bridge, the storm, all of that is, even the arms of this submarine, I believe, are done in computer. It really goes to show how much computer-generated effects have, progressed over the years. And I always like to, compare the effects in the Jurassic movies with each other, mainly because although Jurassic didn't necessarily pioneer CGI. There was films like Terminator 2 and The Abyss and stuff like before then, or even Tron, arguably Tron. But the idea that Jurassic Park brought us, the first living creatures on screen, and even some vehicles and stuff like the tour cars, like that, that innovation really is what kicked off the whole computer generated, era, and like it changed cinema forever, basically. And so it's always good to like look at the films in the same franchise as the original film, and think about how the effects have progressed over the years. Now we can see the submarine is backing up straight, when the lights go out, straight into the jaws of the Mosasaurus. Which is a fun little gag, you just see the light go out under the water. And now we have the introduction of the T-Rex. And I have to say, like, for the last film in the series that is going to be set on Isla Nublar, it's such a nice thing to see that, what the filmmakers did was, the opening of this film is probably the closest we're ever going to get to something that's visually similar to the first film, with the yellow raincoat, the rain, shots like this when the lightning bolt goes and you can just see the T-Rex in it. This, aside from the letterbox, should I say, this almost looks like it could be straight out of the original film. And I think that's kind of fitting for the last movie to be set on Isla Nublar. So we see the T-Rex has just stood on the contraption they're using to hack into the system to open up the gate, and that's cancelled the closing of the gate. And this is just so cool. The T-Rex flipping over that truck and chasing this guy. Now this shot of the T-Rex pulling on the ladder to the helicopter is actually a retooled deleted scene from the original film. The original Jurassic Park was going to end with the T-Rex chasing the main characters to the helicopter as they escape from the island, and I believe it was going to like sort of somehow do something similar to this, or at least it was going to chase them to it. And we would have probably gotten a shot like that one that was just on screen, where the T-Rex is looking up at the helicopter roaring. And Jurassic, like other franchises, but I've noticed it a lot in Jurassic because of my affinity for this franchise, but they do love to retool old ideas that that fans once thought were dead, but they always seem to come back. And it makes me wonder, like, obviously I can't talk about Jurassic World, or the third Jurassic World film, or Jurassic Park 6, whatever you want to call it, because of my connection to that movie, but it does make me wonder what we could see in that film. And now we see the logo. And I actually kind of think this logo, as over the top it is compared to the other movies. I mean it's probably closest is Jurassic Park 3 with the slashing claws. But I thought also, again, it's kind of fitting that the last film set on the islands and all that, it has the actual logo of the park. And now we cut to this news montage of them talking about Mount Sibo erupting. And it's nice to see the the Pteranodon attack from different angles. And we're introduced to the activists of the Dinosaur Protection Group, which I'll get onto more in a minute. Now, it's interesting to note, if you read the bottom ticker, you can see it starts to say former InGen scientist Dr. Henry Wu. And just a little fun fact, that was originally going to go along a little bit further and reveal how he lost his credentials. But from working with Colin Trevorrow, I've come to learn that he really likes to, get to the point of things. So just by even just seeing former InGen scientist Dr. Henry Wu, you know that he's a former scientist. You know something's happened where he's not a scientist anymore in the public eye. And we'll later talk about more about that when we get to it later on in the film. And here's Dr. Malcolm, obviously, talking to this group of politicians about his thoughts on the matter of the dinosaurs. And it goes without saying, it's amazing to see Malcolm back. And I will admit, after watching the second Independence Day movie, I was kind of concerned about how Jeff Goldblum was going to approach this role. I thought, oh no, is he going to really play it out? Because there is this sort of online, sort of community around Jeff Goldblum that he really plays up to, and I was hoping he wasn't going to bring too much of that to this, and he didn't at all, which is absolutely amazing. He plays it straight, and it really feels like Malcolm is back. And now we're introduced to Claire coming into the elevator, and she's the doors are opening, and you can see they sort of struggle to open, which is sort of a visual cue that they can't afford the a very good, well-run place. Now, we got to visit this set when we were working on the, when we were preparing to work on the viral marketing for this film. And so I'm somewhere behind this wall where Claire is on the phone here. I'm behind that wall somewhere watching all this on a monitor with the filmmakers and producers and all that. And there's loads of detail here which which sort of is missed. There's newspaper clippings on the wall, and they were fully fleshed out, and so we got to use those assets on the Making of the Dinosaur Protection Group website, and sort of go into them further. We took pictures and all that, and we edited them to suit the actual, to go into more detail. But a lot of the stuff you see on the Dinosaur Protection Group website was actually here on this set. Some of the posters and newspaper clippings, as I mentioned. You can kind of see them all on that board in the background. But obviously the film doesn't focus in on them. Now, it's also interesting to note that the news ticker at the bottom here says the Masrani Global Corporation denies obligation to threatened animals. And basically, that means that Masrani Global have just given up on them. They're not going to go and save the dinosaurs. They don't want anything else to do with them. They've had enough trouble since the death of Simon Masrani. They just don't want anything to do with the dinosaurs. They just want to let nature take its course. And obviously, as we can see, the politicians have all agreed that this is an act of God, and they it's gonna that's a privately owned island. It's still owned by Masrani Global, but Masrani Global doesn't want anything to do with them, and so everyone's just abandoning them. And Claire suddenly gets a call off the elusive Benjamin Lockwood. Nice to see some sort of redwood trees here. Now, it's interesting to note that this building shot here that we're looking at, that's predominantly CGI. There's I think only the stairs and the door and sort of maybe the bottom windows are real. It's fantastic stuff. You wouldn't even realise it, but it's there. There's the Lockwood logo. Now this painting we're about to see of John Hammond was beautiful, and I made a joke on set when I saw this. I was like, has anyone laid claim to that? Because I'd love to have that hanging up in my house. And obviously someone had already taken it. Now, it's interesting that Eli Mills says, John Alfred Hammond, the father of Jurassic Park. I believe, if my memory serves me right, that's the first time we've heard the name Jurassic Park spoken since Jurassic Park 3, I guess. I don't think anyone mentioned the word Jurassic Park in person in the fourth film. I think it was only seen like on Lowry's shirt and on the Jeeps. They kept calling it the old park, but no one actually said Jurassic Park. So it was actually nice to hear a character say that name in this movie. Now I will state this set here is my favourite set from any Jurassic film so far. Like this set is gorgeous to look at. I just love the layout of it, and going from the entranceway into this huge museum-like room with all these fossils and dioramas and that. It's just fantastically detailed set and huge, like it was massive. And I know some fans out there, in the fandom, was talking about were these stuffed dinosaurs in those cases in the background, but no, they're just statues. It was a misconception from an E article, I believe, that talked about it, and they assumed that they were stuffed dinosaurs, but they're not. They're actually just statues. They're Lockwood's wish list of dinosaurs he would have liked to have cloned. So Benjamin Lockwood here, who we've been introduced to, he's talking about life lessons. And he asks Claire, I think it's just here, he says this, he says, life teaches us some very hard lessons, doesn't it, Claire? And she says, yes, which is obviously invoking what she learned from her time during the incident at Jurassic World. And Lockwood is obviously talking about, his daughter, which we'll later come to learn more things about as the film goes on. But in hindsight, like when he says things like, we'll save these dinosaurs as a gift for our children, you can kind of get this sense that there's something going on with him. So now we're introduced to the mission at hand. So Mills asks, he's explaining to Claire that there is a sort of a tracking system on the island that they need to turn on because they need to save a specific dinosaur. He also says here, which he just mentioned, that moving these dinosaurs off the island isn't exactly legal. And that's actually quite an important piece of information to take on board, because what they're going to be doing, or what they're doing, although he's proposing that they're going to go save these dinosaurs, as sort of a moral good, and move them to the sanctuary, they are doing it, underneath the law. They're not doing it legally. So they've got to sort of move in quickly and get out. And it's also interesting to note that he did say to Claire a few minutes ago that he didn't know that the raptor had a name, which obviously is a lie, as we come to learn. Now, it's really nice to see snowy mountains and this forest here where Owen's shack is. I really think like this location here is, for me, that was the real moment in this movie when I saw it for the first time, that I really felt like we're going off island, like for real. Like we hadn't really seen snowy mountains and all that sort of stuff in the franchise before this, and just to see this sort of location in a Jurassic film, for me it really opened up the world a lot more. It was like we are going to new locations now. It's not going to just be, a Costa Rican endeavor. and now we're at the bar. This bar set was actually right next to the Dinosaur Protection Group set. They were right next door to one another, so you could go out of one door and straight into another, and you were on one set and then straight on another. And it was funny because at the time I was working as a bartender. I had a job at a bar just before we started work on this, and I did sort of make a passing comment that if they needed someone to play the bartender, I'd be open for it. But I don't think they wanted me. I think they already cast someone. I do really like Claire and Owen's dynamic. It is a classic dynamic. Like, he's someone who runs away from his problems, and he likes to just he's more of like a sort of, what would you call it, like an isolationist. We see him in the first Jurassic World. He lives on Isla Nublar on his own in a little shack by the lake, and then in this film we see him trying to build his home away from everything else near the mountains. Whereas Claire, in both movies, and for different reasons, she's living sort of the busybody life, In the first one, she's managing the park. In this one, she's trying to save the dinosaurs. But she likes to get stuck in. And she's, trying to make a difference. I also really appreciate the fact that they wrote the line that Owen just says he would just let Blue die. Because like I said, he's trying to run away from it all, as Claire says. And now we pan down to Owen's shack, and we can see him watching old footage of him raising the second generation of raptors, the ones we see in Jurassic World with Blue, Charlie, Echo, and Delta. And I think this is a really, really important sort of bit of context to have, because this really enhances what you see in Jurassic World. If you see this film and then go back and watch Jurassic World, and you have this context of how they raised, the raptors, it really does help with what you see in Jurassic World. And it also enhances, how aggressive they are in Jurassic World, because you can see how at the beginning Blue was really curious of Owen, but then obviously growing up, her natural instincts, she's at war with her natural instincts. So you kind of see that, juxtaposed with this context. Now, I believe I just saw Pat Crowley again playing the pilot. He played the helicopter instructor in Jurassic World. It's like sort of a running theme that he's just going to be flying planes and helicopters in all these films. Like a running gag. Now, I will probably admit this is my favourite sort of aspect of Fallen Kingdom, was the fact that we had these two parallel storylines going on at the same time, which obviously meet towards the climax of the film. So like, they're usually in a Jurassic film, they go off to the island in the plane and then we follow them to the island, straight away. But in this movie we cut back to the Lockwood Manor and we're introduced to Maisie, and we start to learn about their relationship. And the film's going to do this quite a lot, because it's telling two stories that build to basically the dinosaurs getting off the island. And I really appreciated, seeing this side of the story, mainly because it's something we hadn't seen before. And with J.A. Bayona behind the camera, it's shot very differently to what we've seen before as well. And I really like their relationship and stuff. And, as what we come to learn with Maisie and Lockwood and, Iris, all what went down at this mansion. There's this sense of like sort of melancholy and a sort of a sad tone to this whole household, and I really like that basically because of what's revealed with the story. It makes me feel what Maisie's feeling. There's a nice little model of Jurassic Park, sort of a concept model of like what they wanted the visitor centre to look like and whatnot. And we've returned to Nublar, and we get these absolutely gorgeous shots of the volcano erupting and the valleys. So you can see the plane going down the valley here, and then we get this like shot of the broken gates and the monorail. And then Owen's looking out the window, and this shot of the volcano is amazing. And the sound design. This was something that obviously, myself, Tim, and the others who worked on the viral marketing of this film, we don't know what the film's going to look or sound like in its final form until we sit there at the premiere. And I was curious the entire time of like, how are they going to, do the sound design of the volcano? I was really curious about how that was going to work. And as we, see as the film goes on and as the characters get closer to the volcano, they did some really interesting things with it, and they really made it like this foreboding presence on the island. I was actually worried that they weren't going to make it sound bassy enough, but they really did. They knocked it out of the park. And so we've got this awesome looking sort of gate into the park. It's almost like an airlock. You've got the double gates. And they had this in the first Jurassic Park, when the Jeeps go through. There's sort of a double lock mechanism of gates. Now I have got an Earl Grey tea here, so I'm just going to have a sip. Now, Franklin just said the T-Rex should be dead, right? And we get this little monologue from Zia about how you can't predict that it's going to be dead because it's a clone in a different environment and it's, well fed or whatever. And it's just really, I'm really glad they addressed that, because a lot of people were wondering, like, how long is the T-Rex going to live for? And, shouldn't it be dead and all that sort of stuff? And these were things some fans were actually talking about at the time, and it's good that they kind of addressed those sort of things. And here we see some of the battered and overgrown Main Street. Now, this is one of my favourite lines from the movie, where Owen and Claire look at each other and the character Wheatley asks, "Bad memories?" And then Owen says, "No, some were good," and Claire gives him a look. And that, I just really like that, because it just makes me really like their characters. Now, this shot of Zia looking out of the window, and you can see the trees and the reflection moving. This kind of shot really invokes the original Jurassic Park, like when Grant and Malcolm and all that are looking out of the tour vehicle at the T-Rex paddock and all that. It reminds me of those kind of shots that we've seen before, but obviously under different context. Different context, different vehicles, different dinosaur, different place, different time. And now we see a Brachiosaurus walking across Main Street. And it's interesting that we did hear the Brachiosauruses in Jurassic World. and they were kept separately, or at least they were in a different part of the park that we didn't see. But it's nice to finally see the Brachiosaurus back on the big screen. We haven't seen it since Jurassic Park 3, and I will admit, I don't really like the design of the ones in Jurassic Park 3, but this design of Brachiosaurus I really like. I like the sort of updated look to it with the kind of blue tint around its eyes and stuff. It looks like the original version, but kind of more, how should I put it, more detailed. And here we are at the bunker. Now, this bunker is actually meant to be a building from the original park that had been sort of updated at the time of Jurassic World. So like when Jurassic World was established, this sort of bunker with a tracking system was put in place on top of a building that was already there from the original park, which I always thought was interesting. There's a couple of nods to that in the design of the thing. Like there's an alarm system that goes off at one point, and it sounds like an alarm from the original park. But you kind of get this sense that it's like a mixture of the old and new. And obviously, since the park has gone down and there's been seismic activity, all the lights are hanging off the ceiling and the plants are growing in, and you can see shafts of light coming in from holes in the ceiling and stuff. It's a really well designed little set. I like seeing all the old cameras for Jurassic World in the background. Like you can see that they can see like other parts of the park. And again, this set was actually at Pinewood in London. And it was a couple of stages over from the Arcadia and Lockwood set. The actual DPG set and the bar set were down the road, about a 10-minute journey down the road at a different location. Here we see some compies having a drink, which is really nice to see. See dinosaurs just doing their thing. Obviously, it gets interrupted by the trucks, but just to see the compies just standing around having a drink is it's quite nice. And there's this old image in the Lost World souvenir magazine that shows the pictures of these compies around a little puddle drinking, and I kind of get the sense, even though it's not confirmed, that's kind of a homage to that image from the Stan Winston studios. Now Owen finds the tracks of Blue, and we can see he's looking up now at the pteranodons flying over. But he said to Wheatley, or he will say to Wheatley in a minute. Here we go. So he finds the tracks of Blue, and then he says to Wheatley, and this is a throwback to Jurassic World, where he says, "Wheatley, I'm on a fresh sign. Wait for my signal." And it's the "wait for my signal" part that's important, because that's the exact same thing he told Hoskins. And obviously Hoskins betrayed him. And as we're about to learn, that same thing, lightning is going to strike twice. Now it is so cool to see this tour vehicle from the first park lying here. And this is what was known as Blue's Nest, I believe. This is where she sort of hangs out. And in one shot, which I find to be amazing, we get compies and a raptor standing on top of the old tour car, which is just it's just kick ass. And it's nice to see. We never got to see raptors with the old tour cars in the first film, and it's just nice to see that happening here. Now Blue looks a little bit more leaner, a little bit more thinner. A little bit more deadlier. She looks more meaner in this film than she did in by the end of Jurassic World. They sort of tweak the effects with each film, and I think she looks really cool. And I swear they've added more of a sort of a shiny look to the blue strip down her sides. It sort of glows more in the sun, or like it reflects light. Now Owen's panicking because Wheatley has done a surprise attack. They didn't wait for his signal, and now his man is being attacked by Blue. And he panics and shoots Blue right in the chest, and she falls over. And Owen then gets tranked by Wheatley. And this is obviously the double cross happening right now. And there have been clues to this, like Wheatley says that, they've been there for a while collecting dinosaurs. This was earlier on in the bunker, and Claire said, how did you find the other dinosaurs? And he said, the big herbivores are easy to find. So there's no real sort of sense of how long have they actually been here. Like, how many dinosaurs do they actually have? That's something, we don't exactly know how many. And then they leave Owen to the mercy of Mount Sibo, which then begins to erupt. Now you can see, you hear someone in the background say, cut the cord and let's go. So they cut the cord and the doors start locking. And they've locked Claire and Franklin in this bunker. And then we get these amazing shots of the earth splitting open and lava just coming through, and the shockwave hitting the truck that Wheatley's in. And this is all what I meant earlier by, like, the sounds of the volcano and making it feel foreboding and really like a really dangerous presence. Even more so than the dinosaurs in some aspects, and I really think they nailed it. And obviously, it's all starting to come out now, the nefarious actions of Mills and Wheatley and all what they're doing. And poor little Maisie has just learnt, she's just been shouted at by Mills. Now we come to the scene where the Sinoceratops wakes up Owen by licking him in the face. And this is actually a nod to the Lost World novel, where the character of Sara is woken up by a Stegosaurus that licks her face to wake her up after she's been knocked unconscious. So disgusting. And I like the little detail of the fly getting caught in the saliva. It's nice to see another, ceratopsian dinosaur in the series, and I really think the Sinoceratops looks gorgeous with its colours on its frills and stuff. And then we see this shot of the lava approaching Owen, and the first time I saw this scene, I was cracking up. But I was also on the edge of my seat because this is like nightmarish. You would not want to be in this situation. And obviously another visual sort of, I guess, I don't know if it would be classed as a metaphor, but it's kind of, a visual thing of the car being set on fire. And a minute ago we just saw a shot of the logo being covered in lava, and it's like, saying goodbye again to the old park. It's all burning down. We're moving on from this place. And I did say this to people on Twitter. I was talking about this film, and I said, like, the whole first half of this movie that's set on the island is like an overture to all of the classic moments from the previous Jurassic films. You know, you've got a chase sequence with a herd. You've got like a big T-Rex sequence. You've got this sequence of the baryonyx coming into the bunker. This sort of claustrophobic set. So for the last time we're ever going to spend on the island, they pulled out all the tricks for this sequence. And this shot of the baryonyx like coming down the tube, and you just see it illuminated by the lava is so cool. I really like the design of this baryonyx, mainly because it looks old. Like, it looks like something from the early days of Jurassic Park. Like, we weren't told this or anything, but this is only my personal sort of, I guess I'd say, headcanon. But like, I like to think that this is a baryonyx that is one of the originals, has been around for some time, shipped over from Isla Sorna. The baryonyx has been on the park map ever since the original film, so it's it was finally nice to see this this animal brought to life on screen finally. And the fandom of Jurassic for years have been asking for like more medium-sized predators in the franchise, and this film brings nearly all of them out of the woodwork. Baryonyx, Carnotaurus, Endoraptor, they're all sort of like medium-sized carnivores. Now I have to say, I really like this next shot where the camera pans down the lava and the baryonyx is coming up, and you can just see its jaws as they slam the top shut. And the music in this scene is amazing, by Michael Giacchino. And then I will say this is one of my favourite moments of the entire film in terms of scale. So we follow this piece of debris going down, and then it lands, and it's actually a massive piece of debris, and it makes them jump. I don't. There's just something about it that I really, really like. And obviously, Owen shouting "Run" hails the arrival of the stampeding dinosaurs that have been hidden in the jungles, and they're now fleeing the lava that is sort of, breached from the ground. And we get this insanely cool stampede sequence, which is such a massive sequence compared to anything we've seen in any previous Jurassic. But when you're dealing with the island, the volcano going off and everything, like, it couldn't be any smaller than this, really. Like, this is what you want to see. And it really does feel like these tiny humans have been trapped in this prehistoric world. There's a really interesting video with Jay Abiona where he talks about framing and the ideas behind this sequence where the dinosaurs are all smashing this log apart either side of them. I do recommend it. I believe it's on the internet somewhere. So they get into the gyrosphere to flee for their lives, and then Owen is sort of frozen, and we see the arrival of the Carnotaurus, which every fan out there says that this is probably their favourite design of the new film in terms of dinosaurs, and the Carnotaurus just looks how you want it to look. It looks like, the old Kenner toys come to life. They just really, really nailed it. And obviously now we get to see the Sinoceratops and the Carnotaurus duke it out. And this is just a really, really awesome fight. Like, this is what you've wanted to see. It's so cool. Like, the size of these creatures fighting is just amazing. We hadn't really seen a theropod fight a ceratopsian before in the Jurassic franchise. So just get that little fight there was amazing. And obviously the T-Rex takes down the Carnotaurus, and we get this insanely epic shot of the T-Rex roaring, and its roar being interrupted by the sort of shockwave of the eruption. And I did make a joke of this on the internet. I was saying that each of the Jurassic sequels, they tend to, pose the question, what's bigger than a T-Rex? So all the sequels. So the second film, what's bigger than a T-Rex? 2 T-Rexes. What's bigger than a T-Rex in the third film? Spinosaurus. What's bigger than a T-Rex in Jurassic World? The Indominus. And in this film, it's what's bigger than a T-Rex? Mother Nature. The T-Rex hunts the Carnotaurus, or at least takes it down, maybe for like a territorial, display of sort of power, and then obviously it's interrupted and it walks away. And we see Owen covered in dust, and the gyrosphere goes flying off the cliff. Now, it's interesting to note, obviously a lot of people compare this movie to The Lost World, and obviously it does invoke a lot of that sort of similar imagery. But they do things differently in context. Like in The Lost World, they're dangling over the cliff towards the ocean, leaning on glass that's cracking, and they don't want it to break. Whereas this is the complete opposite. They managed to fall all the way down the cliff into the water, but now they want the glass to break so they can escape. And it's just nice to see that. This is what I think makes for a good sequel. You take like a similar premise, you set it up with different context to what was seen before in previous films, and the stakes are sort of reversed. And they do it with like Terminator 2, Aliens, all like the classic sequels that people love. They tend to do it. Lost World does it with Jurassic Park. And this film does it with The Lost World. And we get this really, really interesting single camera shot that doesn't cut at all since they've fallen down. And you can hear the sounds of the dinosaurs under the water, and we follow Owen coming back, and he's going to try and prise the door open. It's actually a really tense sequence. You've got this shot of them swimming up. It's such a beautiful looking movie. And then they climb up on the beach, and you can see they're all out of breath, and they're all coughing and gasping. They can't believe they've like managed to survive that. And Claire asks, where's Zia? And Owen says it was a double cross. They took her. She must be with them. And Claire says it was all a lie, as they realise they were double crossed. Now this is really cool. You can see the helicopter flying past with the T-Rex underneath, and I believe we saw the T-Rex swimming in the ocean as the gyrosphere was sinking. So I'm assuming they just whipped it out of the ocean. But they do kind of leave it ambiguous as to how they got the T-Rex so quickly, but I'll let you decide. Now again, talking about like sort of invoking the Lost World but sort of flipping everything. If like the Lost World, when they're capturing the dinosaurs, they're doing it really efficiently with these high-tech vehicles with doors that open up on the side, and these contraptions that come down on the top of Humvees, whereas in this film it's like just grab and go, and they've just got normal sort of SUVs and 18-wheeler trucks and stuff. And if you can see like this Stegosaurus, it's just crudely put under a tarp, half sedated, chained, just with ordinary chains. Like everything's a bit half-assed, because we have to keep in mind this whole operation is illegal and it doesn't have the massive funding as what InGen would have had in the Lost World, or at least, you know, InGen made those vehicles when they had the money before the fall of Jurassic Park, so they were still at their disposal. Whereas in this film, it's kind of been convolutedly patched together with what they can get. They just grabbed any equipment they could to sort of, you know, capture these dinosaurs, and it's kind of more of a rush job. I don't think it would have felt as believable had they all had these really, really high-tech vehicles that they were capturing the dinosaurs with, like what InGen had. They all have these like sort of ex-military vehicles and all that, but these guys, they're just it's kind of like they're just making up as they go along. This is the East Dock, and we can see that it's currently being bombarded with, you know, lava bombs and ash and fire and brimstone and all that sort of stuff. Nice little throwback to the line earlier where Claire was talking about how Owen wouldn't let her drive the truck, and that's one of the things that drove them apart. They had an argument about that, and then in this moment Owen's like, go get the truck. It's like, you know, nice little throwback to that line that he trusts her to drive this truck. And again, this is also sort of a nod to Jurassic World, where Claire drove the Medivan from the Raptors. We get this sort of, it's a very Indiana Jones-esque action sequence, but I think it really works. It's a fun little action sequence. And obviously this was the scene that everyone was talking about. The Brachiosaurus being left on the dock. And you can see the Brachiosaurus starts to get engulfed with like the smoke and the ash, and it like looks up and goes to breathe the air above, but it obviously, in doing so, it does the sort of classic pose that we saw in the first film. And that's sort of like the first dinosaur we saw on Isla Nublar, and it's the last dinosaur we'll see on Isla Nublar. Very poetic. And I think it works mainly because the characters who are watching this aren't like Grant or Malcolm or anyone. If had it been those characters, you would question, you'd think they'd question like, hey, we've seen this before. Like, and that was it. Goodbye, Isla Nublar. And now we're introduced to Mr. Eversole, played by Toby Jones, who's this very obnoxious character, this auctioneer who sells animals on the black market. And you notice that Mills says that, you know, whatever they want, they can use them for like biopharmaceutical medicines or agriculture. Whatever they want, they'll have something for them. And it's like, again, foreshadowing what's to come. The dinosaurs going global. So he says the whole point of selling the Isla Nublar dinosaurs is to finance our future operations here. It's a seed money. Call it an overture to something much more ambitious. And Eversole says, yeah, and much more lucrative, I guess. And Mill says, right. So the idea is that like they're selling the dinosaurs to get more money so they can work on the Endoraptor project, which had been the goal right from the beginning. I mean, Hoskins talked about it in Jurassic World, and he alluded to it, and Wu was secretly working on it, as we come to learn that he's doing here. And it's that idea that everyone is screaming at these characters that this is a stupid idea, that it won't work, and that's the entire point. The whole point of the movie is to say that this won't work, and here's why. And this is how it goes wrong. Now it's also nice to see, you've got this little holographic display here, which we saw holograms in Jurassic World, but I like that you didn't see them everywhere. It wasn't like we saw the shot of San Francisco at the beginning of the film and there was holograms everywhere. It seems to be, the tech that we see in the labs in the basement of Lockwood Manor is sort of like technology that was sort of stolen from Jurassic World. And I think it would have been a bit too much to see holograms everywhere in the world of Jurassic, or in the universe this film's set in. But just to see one in the lab was just nice, sort of a nice thing to say, yeah, that technology does exist, but it's like it's not prevalent and not everyone has it. And we can see Benjamin Lockwood put his glasses on the book and he hides this picture, and we're like, ooh, what's going on there? There's a nice sort of visual of the ship heading into the storm. Now here we can see the animatronic of Blue, obviously enhanced by a bit of CGI in the back of this truck. And once again, like a lot of people compare this to The Lost World, and rightly so in some aspects. This is obviously a kind of nod to the baby T-Rex with its broken leg, and they're trying to fix its broken leg. But in this film, Blue's hemorrhaging because she's been shot, and they need to do a blood transfusion. And again, it's like different context, but sort of a similar sort of thing is happening. And this is where Zia's time to shine comes in. Where she has to, and I'll put this in sort of air quotes, she has to simply remove this bullet from this animal's guts. And now we go into one of my favourite sequences of this entire film, where Owen and Claire, they open the doors as we see here, and they're going to try and take the blood from a sleeping T-Rex. Or should I say, the sleeping T-Rex, because this is the original T-Rex. And there was a lot of fans out there, when Jurassic World came out, were joking that, we see Owen riding alongside the raptors, and there was always these people who were worried that they were going to see someone riding a T-Rex, albeit Owen. There was some fan art of Claire I saw quite a few fans making artwork of Claire riding the T-Rex, and I thought it was kind of funny that, you know, they did get away with doing that in this sequence, but, you know, obviously with the context and everything, it's amazing. Like, it's really good to see someone ride a T-Rex, but in under these circumstances was really kind of what an adventure film's all about. So as Owen says, you have to climb up there. And she scoffs at the idea. Now, there's some other little details in the sequence that Owen mentions that are really interesting to take note of. Like, he says the skin is too thick, so I have to use both hands to find the pulse. And he talks about how she stinks. And we see in a minute how he gets all drool over her. And we can we hear and see some of the flies buzzing around in this place. And those little details are what really bring to life this animal. And obviously they're using a giant animatronic T-Rex in this sequence, which again really sells the idea of this animal being alive. And it's really nice to see the animatronic T-Rex back in action. And then obviously as you come to expect, they slam the door and the T-Rex wakes up. Now, one of the men, I'm gonna talk over this amazing sequence of the T-Rex, doing its thing. But one of the men, before the door shut, they were saying there's a line of the P is silent. So, my guess is they were talking about a pteranodon. Now, another little detail I like here is the T-Rex roaring, and Owen and Claire both hold their hands over their ears, and it really shows how loud this thing is. And Owen does that awesome jump for his jaws, and Claire locks the door. Now, I will say, my one little tiny nitpick with this sequence here is the truck doesn't seem to be wobbling at all here. If it was myself, my creative choice, I would have made the truck wobble a little bit more, because a T-Rex is moving about in there. Seems a little bit stationary, but what are you going to do? So now we see Maisie sneaking down to the labs because she sneakily saw the passcode when Mills was shown Eversole the labs. And Maisie's curious to go check this place out because she's heard of the nefarious deeds that Mills is up to, and her granddad didn't listen to her, or she believes he didn't listen to her. Obviously he did, and he's going to grill Mills in a bit, but she wanted to go investigate herself. We get this shot of her looking at all this sort of lab equipment, and this shot of her looking at the eggs inside the sort of incubator. That there's a trading card from the Jurassic Park toy line of Tim Murphy looking at eggs. That's the exact same thing. So there's so many nods and references to previous Jurassic stuff in these new movies. It's just incredible and really fun to see. Now we see Owen mentions that Delta is a survivor from the second group. Now this is some of the really important context for the raptors that we saw in Jurassic World. So Delta, as he just proved to the camera, she will attack you if you show any sign of weakness. So the raptors are deadly. They will kill you. They will kill Owen. But the thing is, Blue, as Owen's about to mention, is the key, because Blue is the beta of the pack and he's the alpha. They listen to Blue's command, which is why he says she's the key to everything. So when you go back and watch Jurassic World, the Indominus and Blue, when the Indominus becomes the alpha, it's Blue that she talks to, and so the rest of the pack listens to Blue. But it's just really good to see the sort of context of Owen's relationship to this raptor pack. Obviously, we see Maisie tilting her head to the movements of Blue and what Owen's doing. And Owen's talking about how, she feels empathy. And it's sort of a double meaning there. He's talking about Blue, but it also applies to what Maisie is going through and what we come to learn about Maisie. And Zia removes the bullet. And thus Blue is saved. She's alive. He just said Blue is the key. You have Blue, you can get these raptors to do anything. And that is the key. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Mills said that he didn't know the raptor had a name. But obviously he did, because they have these video logs in his lab, or in Wu's lab, and obviously he's seen them. And he also knew that Owen was the one who they needed to contact in order to find Blue. So Mills, there is a lot of little nods of foreshadowing to Mills, being a bit of a liar. Well, a massive liar, should I say. And obviously we've been introduced to Wu here, who is talking about how he needs Blue alive. Ready for the next incarnation of the Endoraptor's genetic makeup. And Maisie sneaking away down this corridor as they're talking, and the Endoraptor's hand starts to slowly come out of the cage in this very, very, very sinister looking claw. And it just brushes her hair, and it's interesting to note that the Endoraptor is being kept in this dark corridor, in this cage, in this corner of this basement. And it's like, obviously, not only does the Endoraptor shouldn't exist, but it's also being kept in a place that's definitely not suitable for a dinosaur. So, the Indominus, for all its sort of, I don't know, well, Owen said it was kind of looking for its place in the food chain, but it did have a big paddock that it could roam around in, whereas this Endoraptor is just in sort of a box in a basement. And obviously, as some fans know, there was meant to be another hybrid in the film. There was meant to be a white Endoraptor, a kind of yin to the yang, which they sort of scrapped. I'm not really sure why. I don't know the reasons for why they scrapped that. I guess maybe it might have been too much, taking the focus away from the Endoraptor. But I believe they were going to have two, and then it was going to be a sort of a Cain and Abel kind of homage. A lot of this film does sort of invoke a lot of the sort of biblical imagery and storytelling aspects. Obviously you've got, but it's all reversed, so you've got the like Noah's Ark. They're moving all the dinosaurs off the island, and instead of escaping like a big flood of water, they're escaping a big flood of fire. You've got Maisie, who's the sort of the princess of the castle, which is Lockwood Manor, and the dragon is the Endoraptor. There's all sorts of archetypal imagery, is what I mean, not just biblical, but archetypal imagery, and it's the reverse Genesis of. It's a reversed version of Genesis, the book of Genesis in the Bible, because of the crimes against God that InGen and Hammond and what Lockwood did. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's meaning that literally, but like definitely in terms of visuals, that's what this story is about. We start at the beginning. It's the genesis of Jurassic Park. We go to Lockwood Manor, which is where they extracted the first DNA from Amber, and where they realised they could actually achieve what they wanted to achieve. So it's like, in order to say goodbye to the park and the islands and all that sort of stuff, they went right back to the beginning of it all. Now we see this other shot of the sort of where the loading docks of Lockwood Manor. We see the T-Rex very crammed into this tiny crate. It's sort of like a cargo. What would you call it? Like a cargo box. And it comes out of its this sort of elevator into this cage. Now that elevator must be really strong, 7-ton T-Rex. Obviously another visual imagery here, sort of a kind of archetypal biblical imagery, is you've got the godlike character sitting in bed and his disciple, or the devil as you could call it, kneeling before him asking for forgiveness. And then instead of, like in the old biblical text, instead of sort of God banishing the devil to reign in hell or whatever, in this story, because it's reversed, as we're about to see, the devil kills God. Mills says it was an unholy thing that you did. And he murders Lockwood, which makes Mills the most evilest character in the Jurassic franchise so far. So we just saw the cane fall on the floor, and I just wanted to make note, for those of you that don't know, that cane actually is the one that John Hammond is holding in the first Jurassic Park in the Mr. DNA video. Not many people noticed, I didn't notice at first until someone pointed it out to me, that Hammond actually has two canes in the first film. He has the classic one that he's holding in the control room, and the one that we see in The Lost World, and he has the second cane that we see in the Mr. DNA video. And obviously in this film we see that Lockwood has that cane, so it's a nice little visual nod to the fact that Lockwood was around at the time of the first Park when they were recording the Mr. DNA video. It's a very, very, very subtle nod, but it is there. So just going back to Mills for a second, Mills he's the most villainous character we've had so far now, in terms of his motives. No other villain in the Jurassic franchise murdered anyone outright or did anything like that. If anyone died, it was at the hands of their sort of ignorance as to what they were doing, or their like Nedry turning off all the fences to create a distraction so he could get off the island. There's a debate whether he actually knew that the dinosaurs would escape, but he did leave the raptor paddocks on, so obviously he didn't want them to get out for any reason. But he didn't, you don't get the sense that he necessarily wanted anyone to die. But in this movie, Mills just flat out murders someone. And Wheatley and his crew obviously tried to trap Claire, Owen and Franklin on the island. So they're not good people. So Maisie has a peek out of the door and sees that she's being guarded, so she can't go out that way. You can see again sort of that visual imagery. You've got the princess high in the tower of the castle, or the kingdom. So the title of the film, Fallen Kingdom, doesn't just mean the fall of the dinosaurs' kingdom on Isla Nublar, but it means the kingdom of man, or this literal Lockwood's kingdom. It's actually a cleverer title than people give it credit for, I think. So you can see Eversole saying one of the guys wants a Triceratops for his kid, like a baby Triceratops. And I've actually got the subtitles on, so I'll be able to tell you what someone says. He says the Russian guy wants 2 carnivores. So he obviously wants 2 carnivores for some nefarious reasons. And now here we see Maisie climbing into the window, and she's going to discover that her grandpa has sadly died. She grabs the photo album and goes and hides in the little elevator. Now the acting from Isabella Sermon, who plays Maisie, she's such a great actress, like really good. And she's actually, I will admit, my favourite child character in the franchise so far. Now, I think I did say that for Jurassic World, actually. I think I said I like Zach and Gray because of their dynamic. But I think Maisie just blows all the other ones out of the water, mainly because of what we come to learn here, which is she looks at this picture and you start to realise that, hang on a second, she's a clone. And Iris says she raised both of them, so Maisie's sort of ties to the integral themes of the entire franchise is massively important. And I just really like that. Like, I really, really like that twist and that introduction of, a human clone into the mix is what Malcolm was talking about right at the beginning of the film, where he says, change is like death. You don't know what it looks like until you're standing at the gates. And it's like the change is Maisie. Now we get this really nice little monologue from Claire, talking about the first time you see a dinosaur. We get this lovely little cute shot of this baby trike snuggling up to its I'm assuming it's mum. It also goes to show that the dinosaurs on Isla Nublar were breeding. Jurassic World had controlled breeding like most zoos. and they made sure that the dinosaurs weren't overpopulating the island. So with controlled breeding, that's different to stopping all the dinosaurs from being female. But obviously, since the park fell, the dinosaurs were free to roam around and do whatever they want. So they've been breeding and doing all sorts. We see juvenile Allosauruses in this, and the baby trikes and all that. So how many dinosaurs survived? As I mentioned, we don't know. But now we enter the auction. Now, just a bit of backstory. This room in Lockwood Manor was actually meant to be a ballroom that's been converted for this black market auction of dinosaurs. His Ankylosaurus in this cage is very unhappy. And the CGI on this Ankylosaurus is incredible. We've got Owen and Claire using the Stygimoloch to make their escape. And I'll talk more about the Stygimoloch in a minute. It's one of the new dinosaurs introduced in this film. So here we see what Eversole says here. He says, a juvenile Allosaurus. So this Allosaurus isn't that old. And we have actually yet to see a fully grown Allosaurus on screen. And I really love this montage of them selling all the dinosaurs. There's a Baryonyx. And the cut between that and him slamming the hammer down in time with the Stygimoloch bashing his head on the wall. It's just a really well done sequence. And the music is epic here. We can see them shipping the dinosaurs out. Now the Stygimoloch, I just think, is a great addition to this film. And they really made this a fun little character. I really love this design, like the kind of like brownish red design. It just looks really cool. And we did briefly see a Pachycephalosaurus in Jurassic World, like a fully grown one. And so we can see the size difference between the Stygimoloch and the Pachycephalosauruses. And here you can see where Isabella Sermon's acting really comes through. She really plays this moment really well. I'm just trying to remember what the colours on her t-shirt, they represent the different makeup of DNA. I won't be able to name them, but I believe the character of Gray mentions them in Jurassic World when they're in the Innovation Centre. I haven't got my phone on me, and I can't stop my computer because I'm recording this, but those colours, the yellow, blue, red and green, they all represent the makeup of DNA, I believe. So a nice little sort of costume design for this character. So now Owen peeks his head around the corner, and we can hear in the background that one dinosaur has gone for 21 million. We don't know which one, but we hear the gavel slam, and Eversole mentions that they're halfway through the evening, so we don't really know how many dinosaurs have been sold. It's kind of up for debate whether they were sold in alphabetical order, mainly because we had the Ankylosaurus, Allosaurus, and then Baryonyx, so it seems to be going in alphabetical order. But then we don't really know how many dinosaurs were sold between then and the Endoraptor, because the Endoraptor is definitely they're not selling all of their dinosaurs, as we know, because there's more in containment. But they're bringing this Endoraptor out in this epic shot of it, with the lights all blaring. They're bringing it out to sort of showcase it to these auctioneers, to people who have come to buy dinosaurs. The music here is just absolutely epic. And I really, really do like the design of the Endoraptor. One of the aspects of this creature I really like is the fact that it sort of seems to drag its tail a lot. It looks like an old school dinosaur. So Maisie mentions here that Wu made it, and Eversole, we can hear, says designed by Mr. Henry Wu. And it's the Mr. part that's really interesting because, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, he was a former InGen scientist, so he's lost his doctor in his name. He's been demoted. So with those two clues, former InGen scientist and hearing the Mr. Henry Wu, we you can fill in the blanks in your head. It basically means he was stripped of all his credentials. And he's been hiding here ever since, working on this. But yeah, there's a shot. I'm sort of like jumping between different subjects, but just to go back to the Endoraptor's design, there's a bit later on when I believe it's when it's biting Wheatley's arm. It sort of stands up in almost a vertical pose, so it looks so much like a kind of old school dinosaur design, and I really like that about the Endoraptor, especially since it also walks predominantly on all fours. So it's just nice to see the dynamic poses that this animal stands or runs in. It's a very, very I'd say a very different sort of look and behaviour to it compared to like the other hybrid, the Indominus Rex from the previous film. Now Owen is opening up the elevator and the Stygimoloch runs around the corner and smashes its head on some pipes. I don't know what's going on with that Stygimoloch, but... And we get this real close-up look at the Stygimoloch's eye. And I like the detail that it kind of looks like a goat's eye. There you can see some of the Endoraptor posing like an old-school dinosaur for a brief second. And the Stygimoloch comes into the room. Owen sends it in, and this is where the action kicks off. Now, a lot of people agree with me on this, that it was so nice and refreshing to see this herbivore create so much panic and presumably killed a few people by headbutting them in the chest, breaking some ribs or whatever. And it's just nice to finally see a herbivore creating some real danger. We got some brief moments of that in the previous movies, but this is like the sequence where you really see that the people are terrified of it. And it's coupled with this action sequence of Owen really utilising his Navy training to kick the crap out of all these, henchmen of Mills. And this is just a great, fun sequence. Now, this shot coming up is one of my favourites from the movie, where the Endoraptor's cage rolls back because they've sold it and they're trying to get it to its truck, and there's this tracking shot of Owen takes out, let's count them, 1, 2, kicks that guy, knocks that guy out with a punch, slams his fist in that guy, and then slams this guy against the wall, and then manages to pull the cage back. That shot there, it is like the most action-packed human sort of moment we've had in the franchise so far. It invokes a lot of Indiana Jones-esque sort of action. I just love it. I just think that's great. And you notice here that there's loads of people panicking and fleeing, but there's also trucks leaving, and whether those trucks have dinosaurs in them, well, we don't know. And Wheatley, looking bewildered at all this, then starts to make his way into the auctioneer room. And he's amazed to see what he finds just standing in a cage, which is the Endoraptor. He takes aim and takes 2 shots. And the Endoraptor falls down. Now, I remember reading this early on in pre-production that the Endoraptor fakes its sort of... I think originally it was meant to fake its death. It wasn't meant to fake that it was asleep. If I remember correctly, it was fake being dead. And then Wheatley goes into the cage and gets taken out. But it's one of those moments that proves how sort of cunning this creature is and its level of intelligence. And he tries to take its tooth. And this is one of those sort of gag moments that, makes the audience laugh. Because they know what's coming, And when the Endoraptor opens its eyes, its sort of muscle contracts in a certain way that looks like it's smiling. And then we get probably one of the most brutal deaths in the entire franchise. This is the shot, where it's standing upright. It looks like an old school dinosaur. Bites his arm off and swallows it whole. It's just, oh man, that is so gross. And then you can see all the blood trickling down off his teeth and his drool, and Wheatley's just sobbing. And then it basically just sort of plays with him in the cage, and it's really brutal because it doesn't just kill him outright. It kind of flays his leg. You can see it there. If you look closely in the background, it's really kind of gruesome what's going on in that cage. It's like holding him up by his torso, just chewing him. And now Eversole remembers the code from earlier, and he tries to close the door. And the Endoraptor makes his escape. And the door slammed just in time. These guys were hiding in the elevator from the Stiggy Moloch. They were too afraid to come out. But then obviously the Endoraptor's tail opens the door, and these 4 people, they're all dead. I'd be very surprised if any of those survived. Which, it's like, I haven't done an actual count of how many people the Endoraptor kills, but I'm pretty sure it must have the highest kill count in the franchise for a single dinosaur. The Indominus Rex took out the ACU guys, but I how many of them were there? And I think maybe 2 or 3 of those survived, or maybe 1. But then again, we didn't see exactly how many people the Indominus killed when it was lost in the park. But in this film, we definitely see how many people the Endoraptor kills, and it's a lot. And here, just in case no one worked it out from the picture, Mills spells it out for everyone that Maisie is a clone of her own mother. Which means that Lockwood was her dad, technically, not her grandpa. And there's this shot of Maisie here, sort of panicking at the realization of what's happening is so good. She played it so well. And as you can see, Dr. Wu and his team once again are making their escape, and they're grabbing all the equipment they can. And there's this, I love this, Franklin. We last saw Franklin on the boat going off helping with some ropes, and then the next time we see him, he's in the labs. And it's just funny because we don't know how he managed to get from one place to another. But, you could have a whole separate short film about how he got here. But I do like that, we don't know how he did it. It's kind of funny. And Franklin tranks Wu and then saves Zia. Dr. Wu is unceremoniously dragged off, and that's the last we see of him. And Blue is released from her cage to enact chaos on this guy. Blue is brutal. She's biting the back of his head, and it's just she's really chewing that guy to bits. And you can see when Blue runs forward there to grab that guy, you can hear some of the old sounds from the first film as she roars. And we get this this action sequence of Blue escaping this explosion. I really like that. The whole lab exploding and Blue jumping through the window to make an escape. And obviously that releases this toxic gas, which, if I'm correct, it's above the it's in the labs above the containment level. So the gas is going to sort of filter down eventually. And now we come to sort of what I would say this is the third act of the movie now begins here. Or maybe the third act began when the Endoraptor, when the Stygimoloch sort of ransacked the auction. But this whole sequence with the Endoraptor in the sort of the main hall of Lockwood Manor is just so cool. And it's cool for a number of reasons, but the main one for me is the fact that you've got all these old dinosaur fossils, and then you've got this living dinosaur walking around. And I really like the look of this old museum, I don't know, sort of architecture and look, with this genetically modified hybrid dinosaur walking around, climbing all over the skeletons and stuff. It's just such cool imagery. And I'll admit, something I never thought I'd ever see in a Jurassic film. You told me this 3 years ago, before I even knew about all this. I'd be like, what, really? This, they're going to do that? That's so cool. This shot here of the Endoraptor just standing on top of this giant Triceratops skull. it's just the kind of imagery I love to see. Because whenever you go to a museum, you always imagine, like, what if like there was a dinosaur running around in amongst all the fossil dinosaurs, and now we get to see it. Albeit it is a hybrid, but you know, this invoking the same sort of thing. Now the Endoraptor is really confused because it doesn't know where the people went. And it sniffs towards the door and then gets confused because obviously it doesn't realise that there's this secret entranceway. Obviously Maisie showed them where to go here, and I think it's really, like, who doesn't enjoy creepy old mansions with secret doorways and you know, little access panels and stuff that you can sneak around in. Owen decides to shut the power off to this whole level so they can hide from the Endoraptor. Now, like all good Jurassic Park films, well, not all of them, but the majority of them, you have this sort of technical aspect to it. So in the first film, you know, the Grant and the kids are trying to climb over the fence, and Ellie's restoring the power, which is putting them in danger, and they don't realise it. So it's like the protagonists are inadvertently putting each other in danger, and that happens here with the Endoraptor running around. Zia and Franklin are trying to put the power back up or restore. They're trying to restore the systems to ventilate the gas out of there. But as we're about to see, in doing so, they turn the lights all back on in this hall, which causes a lot of problems for Owen and Claire and Maisie. So that's sort of similar sort of idea. And obviously it goes without saying, for Jurassic Park fans who know the franchise really well, it's really nice to see in the sort of diorama that they're in right now, when the lights come back on, you see Velociraptor standing up against a Dilophosaurus. And the Velociraptor is actually sort of an orange with striped design over it, which is definitely a nod to the Lost World, because that's what the raptors look like in the Lost World. They were orange with black stripes. And the Endoraptor is currently attacking them, and its claw pierces Claire's leg. It's quite brutal. Just goes through her like butter. And then Maisie's screams are what draw the Endoraptor out. And some fans have picked up on this, and I kind of agree. I don't know if it's actually intentional. I haven't actually asked the filmmakers. Maybe I will do when I get the chance next. But the Endoraptor sounds like it's almost imitating Maisie's scream down here. And this time you get another nod to the original film, where Lex is trying to pull the door down on the little cupboard that she's hiding in, and Maisie's doing the same thing here. But again, the context is different. In Jurassic Park, the raptor's actually running towards a reflection, whereas in this one, the stakes are different. There's no reflection. If that Indoraptor made it there in time, Maisie would be dead. Like there's no way she'd escape. Now Maisie makes her way up to her room, and she literally has no idea what to do, other than to do what kids... You know, I've done this before when I was scared. You just go up into bed and hide under the sheets because you're like, I don't know what to do. Nothing bad happened, by the way. Just watch the scary film or something. You don't know where to go, so you just hide in bed under the sheets. And here we get one of the most epic shots in the film, which is the Endoraptor climbing along the roof and roaring into the night. It's such a gothic image, and really, really kick-ass. And so the Endoraptor is climbing down the roof, and I always get vertigo in this shot, especially at the cinema on the big screen. Just because of the angle of the camera, the way it goes upside down and then spins around. Very few shots in movies make me feel kind of a vertigo kind of feeling, but this one definitely does. And J.A. Bayona, the director, talked about how this whole sequence here is influenced by Dracula, which, is undeniably true. And it's nice to have that kind of like gothic horror imagery and design to this whole movie, especially the last sort of sequence, this whole bit of the doors opening and the Endoraptor coming through the doors, almost like Dracula flying in, to the window to suck the blood of his victims. I just think the design of this whole sequence is so terrifying. Like, as a kid, this is like literally your worst nightmare. The fact that the Endoraptor is so big as well. It's not like a little dinosaur. It's a really big dinosaur. But then the knight comes in to save the princess, taking down the dragon. But what he doesn't expect is the fact that the bullets, much like crocodiles in real life and some other reptiles, like the bullets haven't penetrated the skin. And he's all out of ammo. And then Blue comes in to save Owen. And this is cool. Like, just to have two dinosaurs fighting in your bedroom. Like you can see the smile on Maisie's face in that previous shot. Like, it's... I mean, she looks shocked there. But there's like a brief smile of like, oh my word, look at what I'm seeing. Because obviously the character of Maisie, she likes dinosaurs and that. I don't know if she will after this, but she liked dinosaurs. And... the kind of smirk that you see very briefly, it kind of makes sense. She can't believe that this is happening in her own bedroom. You've got these like stained glass windows in design, like to invoke the kind of castle look to this place. And now we come to the climax where the Endoraptor is climbing on the roof after Owen and Maisie. And it basically just looks like there's nowhere else to go. Again, like for the whole special effects of this movie, the fact that the majority of the background here, not just including the Endoraptor, but the entire background of the house and the forest and everything is all done in computer, and it just looks real. Like, it just looks amazing. Now Claire is here to save the day by basically using the Endoraptor's... how they design the Endoraptor to attack people is the idea is you'd mark a target with a laser, and then the Endoraptor would track it down no matter what. And so they use that design to sort of defeat the Endoraptor. Use that tactic. And it almost looks like it's about to work, but obviously the Endoraptor, being strong, manages to pull itself back up. Now, I did like the kind of small scale to the climax of this film, definitely compared to Jurassic World. Like this little battle on this rooftop. I thought it was nice to go sort of smaller in scale rather than try and go bigger. So there we go, the Endoraptor impaled on the Triceratops, and Blue jumps down and roars in a pose. I think Blue does look a little bit odd in that shot. I'm not going to lie. I like the shot of her on top of the Endoraptor. When she comes close to the camera, I don't think it's a very flattering angle, but what are you going to do? But so, like, the climax of this film, it kind of has a double climax, because you've got obviously the death of the Endoraptor here, which, as I was just saying, is kind of small in scale when you really think about it compared to the ending of other movies. But then you get this climax, which is actually it's really grand in scale. This is obviously leading up to the release of the dinosaurs into the wild, and the follow-up montage of dinosaurs going global. And so I do really like that. On one hand, we get the small climax, as I was saying, and then you get, like, arguably the biggest climax we've had, and it is a kind of cliffhanger, which some would argue we haven't had before in the franchise. I'd say that in terms of feeling, yes, like we definitely, this is the first time we've definitely had a sort of a definitive cliffhanger. But at the same time, the end of The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, for that matter, their endings, although they feel like they're closed, if you really think about them, they're not. If you ask like a few questions, they're not exactly final. Jurassic Park and Jurassic World kind of end the same. The fact that the park fails and the dinosaurs are left on the islands. I mean, you could question further what's going to happen, but this film definitely is the one that feels the most like a cliffhanger. Now you can see you've got all these dinosaurs trapped in there, and they're all sort of losing consciousness because of the gas that's filling up the room. Now, I have heard some people say, why didn't they just open the doors straight into the outside to vent the gas out? But the problem with that is the gas would vent out through the cages. The gas is all over this place in this room. So the dinosaurs wouldn't necessarily survive then anyway. But, because the argument is that, they're contained in their cages, you just vent the gas out and then you've still got them trapped. But the problem with that is you don't want them to escape anyway. So, as Claire rightly does, she doesn't open the doors and decides to just let them die anyway. So, her whole opening the cage in those orders, it doesn't really matter because she chose to let them die anyway. But then, obviously, as Malcolm predicted, he said, everything's going to change. And thus, they didn't predict Maisie. And how she feels empathetic towards the dinosaurs because they're both alive, or they're both, are alive by the same means of creation. Now, here is, I mentioned the Stygimoloch killing characters. We've never had a herbivore kill at least outrightly kill a human on screen in the Jurassic franchise. A lot of people think that the herbivores killed some people in the InGen camp in the Lost World, but that's not true. And here we see the guy get trampled to death by all the herbivores. So if anyone doubts that the Stygimoloch, didn't kill anyone in the auction room, I seem to think it did, because you get hit in the chest with one of those things, it's going to break your rib cage. But in this sequence, that guy definitely got trampled by the Triceratops and Apatosaurus. So there you go. The herbivores have finally made a kill in the Jurassic franchise. And rightly so. And here we get this kind of triple diversion. You think it's going to be the Compies, then the Carnotaurus, but nope. It's the T-Rex that takes out Mills. And it's the first time we've seen the T-Rex kill someone since the Lost World. So that's nice. Nice to see the T-Rex finally killing a human. And also you can see the Compies down in the bottom right eating his severed leg that the Carnotaurus dropped. And after standing on the bit of Indominus bone, the T-Rex disappears into the jungle. Now I have to say, Blue is a very, very tough dinosaur. I will say that. She goes for a lot, but she just keeps going. And this is obviously a role reversal from the end of Jurassic World. The idea of Owen looking at Blue at the end of Jurassic World and sort of shaking his head, and Blue kind of understanding that means like, no, you're not coming with me or whatever. Or like, we must part ways. And so she understands that, but in this one, the tables or the things have changed. So Owen realizes that she has to like go with him, but she rejects him this time and goes off into the world. She likes to be free. She doesn't like to be caged. And then we get this kind of, I would arguably say, sinister shot of Maisie. Kind of sinister in the fact that as Malcolm's monologue goes on, he talks about how, nothing can be done to stop all this, because humans, we could put in rules to say, hey, let's stop the or the sort of the spread of the dinosaurs around the world, but humans are humans, and it's very hard to actually stop that because the technology is out. And so we get this beautiful montage, and this is like almost the real climax of the movie, of the dinosaurs making it out into the mainlands and going global. Now, obviously, we haven't seen the Mosasaurus since the beginning of the film, but here we see that it's currently hunting some surfers. You can really see the scale of that thing. And then we get the T-Rex breaking its way through the fence into a zoo, and we get this iconic image of the modern king of the jungle roaring at the king of the dinosaurs. And as Malcolm says, we've entered a new era. Welcome to Jurassic World. Which is the complete opposite to how Hammond says it. Like in Jurassic Park, he's saying it hopeful. Welcome to Jurassic Park. And it's his dream. he's introducing people to this dream of his. Whereas in this one, Malcolm's giving a warning of this isn't a dream, this is a reality, and the dinosaurs are a part of our ecosystem now. And there we go. Blue was roaring into a suburban area, and we then hail the arrival of the classic John Williams theme, which we haven't actually. This particular theme we didn't hear in Jurassic World, I don't think, at all. Or maybe it was briefly played during the Masrani helicopter sequence, but yeah, it's just really nice to hear that over the credits here. And yeah, that's Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. I mean, I love this movie, as many of you might guess. I like, what's one way of putting it? I really, really like how it's set up the story for the next movie, and I really like the kind of Lockwood, the two halves this film offers. I really like the Lockwood Manor kind of setting and all that, because it's so contained and it's so visually different to anything we've seen before. Dinosaurs running around a mansion is something that we hadn't seen. But I also really appreciate the whole first half of the film that's set on the islands, and we've got all the classic stuff that we know from the Jurassic movies. As I mentioned earlier, like the overture to all the classic Jurassic moments as a way of saying goodbye to the islands. And I really do like the blend of those two sort of stories that are woven together in this film. And it's just a really, really good movie, and I do think it's up there for me, up there with the original Lost World and Jurassic World. So I put 1, 2, 4, and 5 all equal in my mind. Jurassic Park 3 is the one I have more issues with. I do love that movie, but for different reasons, compared to these ones. And yeah, so I don't know what else to say here, so I think I might just stop it here. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. My voice is shot. I've drunk half of my tea, and I didn't want to slurp too much over this. But let me just have a sip quickly. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary, and if you haven't already, check out my other ones. I will just say, disclaimer, some of my opinions in those old commentaries have changed since then. And if you wonder what they are, you'd have to ask me, because I can't remember what I said, but I remember listening to one of them a while back now, and I was listening back to it when I was re-uploading it, and I was like, man, I don't agree with that anymore, but, I didn't want to change it or anything, so, opinions change over time, and, yeah, who knows, maybe in the future I'll have some different opinions on Fallen Kingdom. But anyway, please subscribe to the channel, and if you can, support the channel over at my Patreon, patreon.com/EwanZilla. Link will be in the description down below. And I hope you guys have enjoyed Jurassic June.